On today's show, let's talk about the trade deadline latest, and let's talk about LeBron James on the brink of history, perhaps making history by the time you've listened to this. That's all coming up today on Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA at large for places like Down UPROXX and SB Nation's For the Sword. That man over there is Evan Dammarell. He's the proprietor of Down Euclid. Evan, let's dive into the latest trade stuff that we have right now. So, Jay, very kind of quiet out there right now. The big NBA stuff going on Tuesdays. We're recording this is Kyrie Irving making his debut comments in Dallas. LeBron James, who we'll talk about in segment 2, being on the brink of scoring history. But the Cavs in the trade intel roundup by Jake Fisher at Yahoo are still looking for shooters, which isn't a surprise. Mm-hmm. Here's what I think stood out from this quote. While Cleveland has been connected by league personnel to various players, such as Portland's Josh Hart and Atlanta's Bogdan Bogdanovic, that's the Bogdanovic with GD in the name, not BOJ. At this juncture, the Atlanta one, just to be very clear about our Bogdanovic's here. The Cavs seem content to move forward with Caris LeVert, who is set to become a free agent this offseason. Evan, when I say that, when you read that, what comes to mind for you when you're thinking about how the Cavs are perhaps handling Caris LeVert ahead of this deadline?
I think it's just the fact that the Cavs are cognizant of the fact that they are asset limited, and Caris LeVert's contract, maybe Kevin Love's contract, if there are some listeners that are hoping just in terms of expirings, are probably your most attractive trade assets at the end of the day. And I think if you're Cleveland, this isn't a market that like screams, oh yeah, this is exactly what we need to push us over the edge to be a title team. Because as we've kind of harped on in the show for a little while now, the Cavs are navigating right against the luxury tax threshold, and it's a little bit tricky just to navigate some of these channels as well. And you might want to keep the powder dry for when free agency opens up this summer, because we talked about it on yesterday's show about rolling over money as well using LeVert's contract. So it's not surprising. I think if you're Cleveland, you're very content with where you're at overall as a team. You have Donovan Mitchell, who is your big trade leading up to this deadline. Then you have Darius Garland next to him. Then you have Mobley and Allen on the interior. Like, you're really set, and you're figuring out how to build around these guys. And if a trade just doesn't come to fruition that the Cavs think is worth their time or energy, like you hold on to Caris LeVert, because I think he's becoming somewhat functional in that 6-man role for you. I think he's finding more comfort in that 6-man role for you. And you just move forward from there. Maybe you do the dirty side of the business and you sign him to an extension, then flip him afterwards because there's just more money down the line on his books. But right now, it just doesn't surprise me when I saw this report come across my desk. But I just don't think people think like, oh, the Cavs aren't going to be trading Caris LeVert. No, I think they will be considering trades, but if it's just not worth their while, they're not going to be like pressed just to make a trade for the sake of making a trade.
Yeah, I think this feels like a report where we're looking at the Cavs saying we are not going to overspend at this deadline. We are not going to push things forward. I think to LeVert's credit, he has tried, I think, to kind of be the version of Caris LeVert that best fits this team. He's had, I think, done a little better job this year of trying to create. He's taken the pull-up threes. He had a good run of making them at a pretty decent clip. The lineups with him on the floor this year, +2 per 100 possessions. And that's a mix of some bench lineups. That's a mix of some minutes with the starters, obviously. But he feels just like a little bit of an imperfect fit. But I really just don't think we're going to get to this deadline and see the Cavs do something drastic. And he's the guy that I think that would kind of be most kind of impacted by that, right? Like, if the Cavs are going to do something big, he's got to be the salary going out. And it's probably not going to be something that puts all their chips that they have kind of available right now on the table, because they could hold them over for later.
Yeah, that's like, you and I are on the same page on this one. Like, the Cavs don't need to cash in unless, again, like a trade absolutely materializes. I think you're, again, looking to work within the margins of what you have, i.e. maybe like Dylan Windler's contract or some of the extra second round picks you may not want to use just down the line, because the last draft is any indication, Cleveland was very comfortable punting on second round picks by taking Khalifa Diop with an early second rounder, but that's neither here nor there. Like you said, the fit is a little flawed at times with Karis LeVert. He doesn't provide you the shooting that you necessarily need. And I think it's just too much ball handling when you have him, then Ricky Rubio, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. But again, it's not a surprise that Cleveland isn't like hard pressed to like move LeVert if they don't have to, because he's also a guy that people like in the locker room. He's a guy that gels well with people on the court. I do wonder just like how things maybe change leading up to the deadline. I know people like try to read too much into it as well, with like the fact that LeVert played on Monday night, and that they against Washington, that he is available Wednesday against Detroit as well. Sorry, I blanked on the days there, folks, but I don't think you can read too much into that stuff. Again, if a trade materializes where Cleveland is able to become a benefactor, maybe they get some assets back for their trouble as well if they're taking on salary. That is certainly an instance and scenario, but I just don't see a plausible path where the Cavs do something stupid or maybe make like a very overly dramatic trade. And let's be frank, it's also lying season, so like a lot of intel could be out there as well. And the Cavs are a team that operates the cards pretty close to the vest, so they could make a trade out of nothing, and none of us could see it coming, maybe except for a select few that are in Kobe Altman's ear all the time. But we'll see what happens. It makes sense to use LeVert as an asset. His fit, I do have questions about now, just with Rubio back. But at the same time, like if the Cavs keep him post the deadline, it's not the end of the world. He is a scoring boost for you off the bench, and it's just more so on JB Bickerstaff to maximize the personnel on the floor.
Well, I think even just beyond that, I think it's just like he's the guy that if comes down to, you phase him out, and it's okay. Like he's not like, if you're gonna phase out one of the ball handlers, like it's gonna be him, and if he's on the roster, that's just the reality of it. It's not just like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you figure it out what you do with him from there. I think what would be interesting if I could get true serum into like front office members and things, like I wonder if they would have regrets on giving up what they gave up for him at the deadline last year, and I wonder how that and I wonder how that factors into what they think about this, because you're not going to get the value you gave up for LeVert back for him. You're just not, like, that's not going to happen. Maybe you get like a player that fits better, but it's going to cost, like, it feels like you're the team attaching assets to Karis LeVert as opposed to giving up assets to Karis LeVert. And that's a very different position than last year. And maybe they have a different internal read on LeVert than kind of the broader consensus. And maybe that affects their value, but they're not going to get the value they got for him. And I think like the best chance to maybe do that would be to like roll over his salary, or use his salary to get a rollover salary and flip him for something else. Okay, we're again 2 days away from the deadline. We'll see if anything else comes up in relation to the trade deadline. A lot could happen between now and then. It is, as Evan said, lying season, but it's also leak season, and we'll see what kind of things pop up here between now and then. But first, got to go into a first ad read, and after that, we're going to talk about LeBron, because he may have already broken the scoring record by the time you're hearing this, but we're going to talk about LeBron, the score. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All it takes is filling out the right information and clicking a few buttons, and you'll be searching for that next great team member. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Finding the right team member is paramount to ending the year strong, and you need the right tools to do it. LinkedIn is that tool. This is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. But you post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back here, Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell here with you. Evan, LeBron James, the scorer. Again, we're recording this ahead of Lakers Thunder. He may have already broken the record. He maybe is going to break it later this week. It's happening this week.
Mm-hmm.
So, Evan, I want to ask you this. When you think about LeBron, in him as a scorer, what comes to mind for you? Where does your brain go?
It really cements his legacy as one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, he already has enough accolades under his belt, but the fact that he was able to claim the scoring title in such dramatic fashion too, like I get the exact number, but between like now and 5-6 years ago, it just seemed like Kareem just was not within reach for LeBron. And what he's been able to do on a night-to-night basis it's pretty crazy stuff. Like I have a story where I kind of mentioned this actually coming out on February 9th, right Down Euclid, where you can tell LeBron is older, maybe a step slower. You can tell he's frustrated and crippled by the Lakers' lack of personnel moves, and i.e. more so trading for Russell Westbrook. But the fact that LeBron is just so consistently giving it his all in his late 30s, that he has so much mileage on his body, is just testament to how he functions as a player. And it's just, again, like you can make the argument for MJ, you can make the argument for somebody else, but at least in my eyes, LeBron's the greatest player of all time, and it's definitely something worth appreciating. And the fact that he scored most of these points while he was a Cavalier at the end of the day, like that makes it even nuttier too.
So I look at LeBron James as a scorer is not how I'm going to remember him first and foremost as a basketball player, which I think I think is kind of interesting for the guy that is going to be the all-time leading scorer, and like considering he's going to play the rest of this year and probably several more years after this, like this is a record I could see never being broken. Like he's just going to be like he's just going to be leaps and bounds ahead of Kareem, and that was already a very, very unbreakable record. I think the biggest credit to him as a scorer, and a lot of this can be viewed through his Cavs tenure, is just how he evolved with the times and played in these different areas of the NBA, and just has been around for so long, right? Like LeBron, first era in Cleveland, is this hyper explosive monster. Then he goes to Miami and is hyper efficient. The second era of Cleveland is a very different version of the first one. He's so calculated and controlled and everything. In this Lakers version, he's added, spot up three or the pull up three in a little bit of a different way. This guy just always has evolved as a scorer. He's always been at the forefront of this. There's never going to be anyone, I think, quite like what he's kind of done as a scorer in that way. And like in the Cavs context, like he's probably going to be the all-time scoring leader when it's all said and done. Maybe someone gets him eventually if they have like a super, super long tenure with the team, just for the team in that sense. But that seems very unlikely. He also just like think about like all of the moments, like even small ones. Like Evan, I was going through highlights and things of him in some of the moments of like things he did on the offensive end as a scorer. And it's like the two that kind of I've been most marveling at are the game against the one John Wall recently kind of talked about, where the Cavs played the Wizards, where Kevin Love throws the outlet pass and LeBron hits that shot, and he's like talking about practicing that shot and just how like that's not an impossible shot for me. Like I can go make that. And then I think of the shot he hit over Jimmy Butler, Cavs Wolves, the 2018-19 or the 2017-18 season. Yeah, where he turns around and hits it over Butler.
Isaiah Thomas hug.
Yeah, the infamous, and like he just like coolly hits that stuff. This guy is just a machine. And he has done this record without, in his Cavs tenure, in his Heat tenure, in his Lakers tenure, like being considered a guy that is like this alpha scorer in the way maybe like Kobe was or Michael was.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think to circle it back first, just to the Cavs lens of things, I just don't think there'll ever be a player that touches all those franchise records LeBron owns, and he owns pretty much all of them. It's a surprise if he doesn't own all, like some of the few records he doesn't own. It's a surprise that he doesn't at this point. But I just think the longevity is like testament to him as a player at the end of the day, and I think that's the key thing when it comes to LeBron. Is just like there has never been that much longevity, nor will we ever see a player that just lasts as long as he did. Like he was first drafted, Chris, when we were in elementary school, and here he is still playing now, and you are married and I am about to be married, and he shows no signs of really slowing down anytime soon. Like that's just testament to how he is. And like to put it through a football lens, like somebody pointed this out, I believe on Reddit, that said like when Tom Brady and JJ Watt are both first ballot Hall of Fame, because they both retired. Tom Brady was 36 when JJ Watt was drafted. Like that type of longevity just is so rare in sports any day of the week that it's just crazy to see how dominant a player can be. And like you said, he has evolved and like adjusted with the times as well. Like I believe it was Kirk Goldsberry tweeted his shot chart from this year, or just at least his time at the Lakers. It's nothing but shots at the rim and 3-pointers, the few mid-rangers. Like, when you look at his shot chart with like the Heat and the Cavs, like there's a lot of mid-rangers, there's some 3-pointers, there's a lot of shot attempts at the paint. Like, he adapts and thrives. And like the peak of LeBron clearly was the Miami Heat heydays when he was just absolutely in his bag. And like the Cavs got the tail end of that. And like he's starting to show again signs of age and slowing down. But like he's consistent, he's adaptive, and it's crazy how uber talented and how it's just most of it is just mental. Like he mentally is prepared, like doesn't read any of the books that he's reading in the locker room, but he certainly is always mentally prepared for whatever a team needs from him or just whatever anyone needs from him, period, at the end of the day.
I'm pulling up his records right now and for the Cavs in terms of career leaders and everything. So he's gonna we'll see where like games and field goals and everything. So 2-point field goals, he is like 3,000 above Austin Carr, which is in itself like that, like no one else has come close than Austin Carr to him. You look through like 2-point attempts, it's like he's like well above anyone else in that way. 3-point field goals, like he's, like 200 something ahead of Kevin Love. Like maybe like Love sticks around and catches him in some way, but like he's like ahead there, and that's not even his thing. Points per game, 27.2 per game as a Cav. That's 4 more than World Be Free. That's like 6 more than Kyrie. Like Donovan Mitchell would need to have like a very like long run at the level he's at this year to kind of maybe surpass that and hit some of that. True, like there's like some other stats where he's a little lower and like effect, like true shooting percentage he's a little bit lower, effective field goal percentage he's like a little bit lower, but all of these like things that are just accumulation of his scoring, no one is ever going to match that. And it's just I don't think I think like I've gotten to the point where I think we've taken LeBron for granted a little bit with just how long he's been this good. I think
just across the board, we take for granted athletes that are this dominant at their craft and at their peak, and it just really crystallizes.
Does he have a 13-year peak?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's like him. It's like Brady. I think about like when Peyton Manning and his body just started to fail him, and you saw the signs of age when he was with the Broncos. Like you don't appreciate how good it is until it's gone. And like when you look at Manning and how like things were just falling apart, and yes, he had that like right off into the sunset with the Super Bowl 50 win, but like there's going to be a moment in time when LeBron hangs it up, and basketball is just going to be dramatically like, yes, there's guys that are like Luka that are kind of waiting in the wings, and Giannis that have become the face of the league, or like Kevin Durant is still going to be around and be dominant as well because his game will age gracefully. But like there will never be another LeBron James. There will never be a guy that is such a catalyst both on and off the court, like that just attracts world renown and everything like that. Just quite like LeBron James. And his story is just unprecedented because he is the true like litmus test case of a high school guy coming fresh out of high school and just completely taking the league by storm from day one and never looking back.
Do you have a favorite like LeBron Cavs performance that isn't like 2016 Game 7?
I mean, yeah, the Game 6 obviously is a really good one. The LeBronto game, I think Game 7 against Boston in the 2018 Eastern Finals is up there too. I think Game 1 of the 2018 Finals as well is like that's vintage LeBron stuff. And then JR fumbling, it definitely made it frustrating. But again, there's just a lot of stuff just in that first, like that second Cavs stint. I mean, there's the one where he hits the game-winning 3-pointer against the Magic over Rashard Lewis, I believe. And like that's a favorite moment of mine. Like there's a lot of just like small moments in between, and there's just like small stuff like the water bottle flip things, or the fact that like the Cavs ran by him like, hey, in order to get him on Shumpert, we need to get J.R. Smith. And LeBron got J.R. Smith so straight that J.R. became like a Cleveland icon. Like without LeBron, J.R. Smith wouldn't be the shirtless legend he is at Browns games as much as he is. What about you?
I think I have 3 that come to mind. Number 1, I think of 2003, the first game he plays in Sacramento of all places, and getting my dad to like let me stay up to watch that game. He was absolutely probably exhausted at school the next day, but like, worth it.
It was a dunk.
Mm-hmm. I go to this would have been the spring of 2017-18 season, the Pacers series, where he just like kind of was like, you could tell he was just like having to like drag every little bit of energy out of that team, and like just navigating that Pacers team and like being in the post, and just how like tense it was for him to do some of that. I like honestly like incredible he got that team to the finals considering everything going on there. And And then I think I think something that like will just be in my head, I think, is they don't win the series, but the shot. Well, I mean, obviously the Pistons' performance where they really put him on the map is one, but I also think that one of the indelible LeBron images is going to be him getting like mobbed by his teammates after he hits that shot against the Magic in that series they lose.
Yeah,
where he hits
that shot was nuts.
That shot is like an iconic Cleveland sports moment. I think if they were to make like LeBron should get 2 statues outside the arena, is my opinion. And one should be the block. One should be the chase down. Shouts to our boys over there. And then the other one should be the some version of like the Magic shot with how he reacted in his jersey getting tugged. I think those are like the 2 indelible LeBron Cavs on-court images, or the chase down block and that shot against the Magic. Those are the 2 like LeBron images seared into my head.
Yeah, I see. It's tough to pick one. Like that one is like, the shot is iconic because it's like Mo Williams and Zydrunas Ilgauskas and like Anderson Varejao swarming him. And you were talking about the Pacers series, like the first LeBron era, for better or for worse, was a lot of, hey, LeBron, we need you to drag this team offensively, all while Mike Brown dials up a very elite defense that LeBron is also the central figure of. And like that's just testament.
That team was not like equipped to really be good. And yet,
they could beat the Celtics, and then the Magic came out of nowhere. Like the Cavs put together the pieces they thought they needed to beat the Celtics, and then the Magic beat the crap out of them in the Eastern Finals. So they go and get Shaq. They go and get pieces to handle Dwight Howard, and then the Celtics become just an even bigger monster, and then they punk the Cavs, and then we watch LeBron rip off his jersey, and yada, yada, yada. Donovan Mitchell happened to be at the Boys and Girls Club. Things come full circle.
Do you I'm pulled up the image, and it's just I'm like giggling at the fact that Sasha Pavlovich is like LeBron has got his arms stretched out, and Sasha Pavlovich is like,
starting 5 for the 2007 finals team was Drew Gooden, Sasha Pavlovic, Daniel Gibson, LeBron James, and Zydrunas Ilgauskas against Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and the San Antonio Spurs.
He had that dunk on Duncan that year, though. That was just like absolutely filthy. So
speaking of the Spurs, remember the block on Tiago Splitter in the NBA Finals when he was with the Heat? Yeah. I thought he broke his wrist, but like that was just pure athleticism.
Yeah, that dude. I mean, this guy is all.
We could sit here and gush about LeBron all day, but
guess what? We probably will in the future when he retires, and God willing, we're doing that podcast and everything. But all right, one more break. We're gonna come back, and we're gonna talk about Cavs-Pistons, which surely will be a basketball game, and we'll discuss that right after this. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. By the way, Travis Kelce, Cleveland Heights' his own, most likely to score a touchdown based on the odds at FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. I just use it to collect some winnings myself. It's really, really simple. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, last segment, Locked On Cavs. Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell. We don't have a spread yet from our fans at FanDuel for Cavs-Pistons. I suspect the Cavs will be heavy favorites in that game, would be my guess. Only Cav on the injury report as of right now is Dylan Windler, who is out with his ankle injuries, and well, Lord knows if when he comes back, everything. Last time I saw him up on the court, he had very large ankle braces. Pistons, by the way, are I'm looking to see if they're playing today. But Evan, what are you looking for in this game? What is anything of interest to you from Cavs-Pistons?
I'm honestly surprised the Cavs aren't shutting down some of their guys for this game and maybe shifting focus to this upcoming weekend against Chicago, New Orleans, and San Antonio. Like, you have to tread lightly and try to get to the All-Star break next week as healthy as possible. And you saw Cleveland shut down Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell when they went to Detroit, and then you saw Evan Mobley and Jared Allen mollywop them. But what I'm going to watch is do the Cavs just kind of enforce their will early in this one and just make this a blow? It's similar to the Clippers game when there was no Paul George, Kawhi Leonard for Los Angeles. Like the Cavs blew them out early and they were able to rest a lot of their guys down the stretch. Or maybe when they played the Jazz in Cleveland and Donovan Mitchell said, like, that's the lowest amount of minutes I played, I think, since high school. So we'll look at games like that and just like the fact that the Cavs probably do need to be mindful of how much they're playing their guys, especially against a Pistons team that has no aspirations of winning right now and getting Victor Wembanyama, and there's obviously no Cade Cunningham either. That makes it tough too. But you just kind of have to figure out like what the next steps are from here. If you're Cleveland, and just maybe take this opponent a little seriously so you can get some much needed rest before it doesn't get out of hand.
So Pistons are not good. Pistons
easy.
Are third worst in offense or 29th in defense on the year. Over the last 2 weeks, their defense has been better, 17th per clean in the glass. But this team is not good. The Cavs are going to have, by all accounts, their full bodies. They'll have a full list of guys. The last 2 games, the thing they have done that has been really good for them is they've gone in and they've beaten teams that are worse than them. They took care of back-to-back against Indiana and Washington in a way they hadn't for like a month. They hadn't just kind of like gotten wins they needed to. What they did is just showed up, put in the effort, and kind of dominated those games, and it were very business-like, just kind of professional wins. Do that again here if you're Cleveland. Take care of business. You're at home against a bad team. You've been a much better home team the entire season. You should beat the crap out of the Pistons. You should take care of business here and give yourself a chance to just get a win. You should. Like, this is one of those wins that if they're like a half a game out of like the 4 seed or the 3 seed come the end of the season, this is one of those games that if you lose it, you're going to be kicking yourself over the fact that you lost at home to the Pistons on a Wednesday. And look, I get it's a busy season, weird losses do happen, all that stuff, but like you gotta just kind of take care of business here. You can't. And I wonder if you're JB Bickerstaff, if you're like, hey, look, we showed up and took care of business. You know, after we had the Warriors kind of debacle where we kind of blew that one, we took care of business against the Clippers. This obviously isn't that same exact situation, but like, don't play. The message almost has to be somewhat, don't play down to your opponent here.
Yeah, that absolutely has to be the message if you're Cleveland at the end of the day. Like, you have to respect the fact that this is still, despite their lumps and flaws, one of the best 30 teams in the best basketball league in the world. And like, you can't underestimate the quality or who you're facing of your opponent. And just like you said, take care of business and just remain mindful of the fact that like this could have an impact on the Eastern standings at the end of the day, which is still kind of crazy to think. But again, I'm surprised if the Cavs don't maybe pull something towards the start of the game and like rest a couple guys just because they can against Detroit. But let me ask you this. Do you think if Caris LeVert plays, because the Cavs will not play between the trade deadline and like this game against Detroit, so like they have a day off. Do you think Caris LeVert ends up ultimately playing like a ton of meaningful minutes for Cleveland in this one? Or do you think if he doesn't, that's an indicator like, hey, the Cavs might have a trade in the works?
I'm just going to not read anything too much into it, because if I play that game, I'm going to take myself into places that are not going to be useful for me. I think
reckless speculation is not a good thing, folks.
My brain is already just like messed up enough. You know, my brain already has enough stuff just pinging around in it that like I'm trying to cope with and deal with. The last thing I need is to like add something that is like entirely not my like business. My job is to talk about it, report on it, but like to speculate about like what Caris LeVert's like minute totals will mean will just like send me down a rabbit hole that I absolutely do not need to go down. If he like honestly like the only minutes I'm curious to see how it handles is how many minutes does Donovan Mitchell end up needing to play, and does Kevin Love play at all, or is he like, is this another game where he's a healthy does not play situation?
So somebody pointed this out to me. Do you think it's a sign of respect from JB Bickerstaff that he's not playing Kevin Love in garbage minutes just because like, hey,
100%. That's
all it is.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we got to show a little bit of respect to the fact that like this is one of our key vets. He won a championship. He's probably a future Hall of Famer at this point. Like, yes, he's out of our rotation because we'd rather play Dean Wade more, because he's probably more part of the future than Kevin Love is. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page then.
Yeah. That is it. Like, I don't think you're throwing Kevin Love out there in those minutes in the same way like other teams don't put out like their veterans. Like Caris LeVert is a little bit like he'll play those. Dean Wade will play those. Like Okoro will play those earlier this year, even though he was in the rotation. Like, and it's not like it's a Robin Lopez situation where Lopez is like the end of the bench guy, and like part of his duty is kind of mopping up some of those minutes because like you're not going to play Jared Allen there. Kevin is kind of his own special case there, I think.
Yeah, no, you and I are in agreement then. Okay, as we wrap up, anything you want to plug, big guy?
Check out the Just Basketball show. We talked about Kyrie Irving and the Liberty and a bunch of other things, so please go check that out. Subscribe.
The liberty to delete his Instagram posts.
Oh boy, Kyrie. God, I don't talk about that guy anymore. But yeah, and look, subscribe to Locked On Cavs and read Right Down Euclid. I'm gonna do your plug for you. Go read Right Down Euclid. Take his reader survey. Subscribe to his, submit questions for his mailbag. Do all of that great stuff. Go support Right Down Euclid. We'll be back after. Yeah, no problem. We'll be back after Cavs-Pistons. So stay tuned for that. But thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Reminder, the NBA trade deadline is fast approaching. Locked On has you covered Thursday, February 9th. If you tune into Locked On NBA on YouTube at 2 p.m., you're going to hear reaction from the trade that will change the rest of the NBA season, who becomes contenders, and who is tanking for a better future. Subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube, and don't miss a deal. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for producing. Back at it tomorrow.